What's going on YouTube? Bacon here bringing you another video. This one gonna be my week 3 match for the MWPA. Happy 2019 everybody. This is my first video in 2019. Hope you all had a great New Year's. I'm back now, so we got MWPA week 3 here, and then I've got my finals match versus Tyler in the VPL coming up probably within a couple days or so, as we get back into the swing of things here. So this week we're going up against the Quinnipiac Qwilfish. They're 1-1. We're coming in at 2-0, looking to stay undefeated here early in the season. Let me just really quickly run through the team matchup. My opponent has Celesteela, Clefable, Hoopa Unbound, Toxapex, Mega Alakazam, Shaman, Salamence, Nidoking, Galvantula, Hitmontop, and Gligar. So a couple things I was kind of expecting was to see the Celesteela and the Hoopa, maybe like a sub variant of Hoopa or Scarf Hoopa. I thought made some sense against me this week. Zam is just a huge threat in general, even though I do have a Alolan Muck. And Nidoking is kind of a big problem for me in general, especially if he pairs it with Galvantula and runs Sticky Webs. That can be pretty much a devastating thing for my team. Obviously, I do have Latios and Aerodactyl, which don't care about Sticky Webs, but my Aerodactyl shouldn't be able to knock out Nidoking from full anyways, and Nidoking will be able to come in on things like Tapu Bulu. Not hard in on Tapu Bulu, probably, but it should be able to get in on Tapu Bulu, click Sludge Wave, things like that. Obviously, it breaks through my Bulu core pretty nicely. If I opted to bring that, also is a huge threat versus my Raikou, because Earth Power will whack me, obviously, even though HP Ice is an option. On my end, it's not going to knock out a Nidoking. So those are kind of the main threats I was looking at coming into the game. One thing that I mostly noted during my team building was that Mamoswine had an incredible matchup. He's got a ton of Ice weak Pokemon, a couple Ground weak Pokemon, and he just really doesn't have a good way to threaten it. Like, besides Shaman and maybe like an Alakazam Focus Blast or something like that, or like a Banded Hoopa, there's not a lot that's OHKOing me. Celesteela can OHKO me with Heavy Slam, probably. I actually didn't run that calc, but all these things like aren't huge threats to Mamoswine in general. Like, I can get off some big hits off on a lot of them, and then threaten out his other kind of weaker mons, Gligars, Toxapexes, Nidokings. Like, I can threaten out a lot of this stuff. Galvantula, if he's not carrying a grass move, things like that. I can just get in my Mamoswine and click buttons. Basically, he doesn't have good switch-ins, is the long and short of it. So that was kind of the first Pokemon I put on my team, as we'll run through what I brought here. I've got Life Orb Mamoswine, running Jolly again this week, just to be able to outrun a couple of things that I normally would outspeed here. I've got 176 into speed. That's just to creep a random like offensive Hitmontop if you wanted to run that, like a Jolly Technician set. Could make some sense versus me, so I just wanted to make sure I was outrunning that thing no matter what, and be able to whack that thing with a couple Earthquakes. I've got Ice Shard, Knockoff, Stealth Rock, and Earthquake. Stealth Rocks are just really nice for chipping down, specifically things like the Salamence. It's good to chip down things like the Toxapex as it comes in, even though it does have Regenerator. It's good to keep that thing as low as possible, chip down the Celesteela, and just kind of wear them out for either Ice Shard sweep down the late end, or maybe like my Raikou to clean up in the end game, because I should outspeed most of his team with my Raikou bar the Mega Alakazam. So that's kind of the idea there behind the Mamoswine. Forces a lot of switches against his team, assuming he doesn't want to sack whatever's in versus me. And I get up Stealth Rocks pretty freely for the most part on things like Gligar, things like Toxapex. You really shouldn't want to stay in with versus me. So I can get some Stealth Rocks up over the course of the game, chip down his team, and it's really nice. He doesn't have good switch-ins for the combination of Earthquake and Ice Shard in this case. I went with Shard over Icicle Crash because I felt like the priority was more useful, specifically because he has the Salamence in the back. I don't want to end up getting DD swept by that thing, especially because I don't have a Choice Scarf for this week. So Ice Shard is really important for knocking out that thing. It shouldn't OHKO him from full, but it does like 80%, I think, minimum. So it's basically going to OHKO him, especially if I get up Stealth Rocks. Like I mentioned, not a lot of good switch-ins from Mamoswine. Knockoffs there to remove items from things like the Toxapex, things from like the Clefable, Celesteela. Leftovers, Black Sludge are good to get off those Pokemon to open the door for my Raikou and for my Latios in the back. Next up here, we got kind of a weird Mega Aerodactyl set. So I didn't run total max speed to force the speed tie with Alakazam. I didn't feel like it was necessary, and I'll explain that in a second here. I've got Jolly with a lot of speed to outrun Scarf Hoopa, and max physical attack with the rest into HP. The plan here was basically I live at full. I live an Ice Beam from Nidoking, which is important because I don't knock him out with Ice Fang. So basically, I can live that Ice Beam from Nidoking. I can live a Scarf, or I can live a Hoopa hit, basically. Maybe not a Banded Hoopa hit, but I can eat that Ice Beam from Nidoking specifically. Was really important to me, and I can Ice Fang him twice and kill him. If I did run max attack, max speed, I wouldn't have enough HP investment to guaranteed live that Ice Beam. So that was kind of the idea behind the Aerodactyl here. Ice Fang, Defog, Hone Claws, and Stone Edge. Hone Claws is just nice to help me boost up late game if he's not unaware Clefable, and potentially sweep him just on the back end. If I can get rid of the Alakazam, should outspeed everything on his team. If I get the Hone Claws up, I'll be doing some massive damage with Stone Edge. I should 2-hit KO most variants of Toxapex. If he doesn't burn me with Scald or Haze Me or whatever, it should get 2-hit KO by Stone Edge. Clefable should get 2-hit KO by Stone Edge at that point in the game. I have to watch out for status moves on those things, like T-Wave Clefable could definitely have some potential versus me. But yeah, Ice Fang and Stone Edge was really the only coverage I needed. I would have liked to run Earthquake, but as you can see, I do have Tapu Bulu in the back, so Earthquake wouldn't be doing as much damage anyways, and I felt like Defog was just necessary to bring in case he brought Sticky Webs. While Sticky Webs don't affect most of my team, it is a bit of a problem for like my Raikou specifically. Not being able to outspeed things like Nidoking would make that thing a huge threat versus me, because obviously it's hard to get Aerodactyl and Latios in directly on Nidoking, so that was kind of the idea behind that. That Aerodactyl set was to get rid of webs if absolutely need be, but otherwise it's a potentially good late game cleaner. And that was kind of the idea there. Next up here, we've got Jetstream the Latios. This is its first game of the season. We got Electrium Z Latios with Calm Mind, Recover, Thunderbolt, and Ice Beam. Bolt Beam coverage is just really nice versus his team. I do have enough speed to outrun the Galvantula and the rest into special attack with a tiny little bit in HP. That tiny bit in HP is actually really nice to help me live an Ice Beam after Rocks versus Nidoking. If he gets Nidoking in on something like my Muck, obviously he can go for Earth Power and whack my Muck. But if he does opt to go for Ice Beam, I should still be able to live it. I can recover, predicting him to switch out, or just go for an Ice Beam and get some massive damage off on that thing. He really shouldn't want to stay in on me anyways, especially if I go for Psychic, which would OHKO him anyways. So I think there's probably going to be a point during this game where I would have to switch in Latios directly on Nidoking to save my Muck, especially if the Mega Alakazam is still alive. So I felt like it was kind of important to have that little bit of HP in there. And obviously I didn't need it into my speed stat anyway, so Calm Mind, Bolt Beam, like I mentioned, really nice coverage versus team. He's got a lot of ice weaknesses, like I mentioned when I was talking about Mamoswine, and the Electrium Z Thunderbolt can help me break through Toxapex and or Celesteela. Hopefully, the idea was to lure the Celesteela with this Z Thunderbolt. +1 Z Thunderbolt should OHKO most variants of Celesteela, and that'd be really nice for things like my Mamoswine, my Aerodactyl, my Tapu Bulu, and my Muck. Really all appreciate Celesteela being gone, so the idea was kind of to lure the Celesteela with the Latios, and even then, after I would have killed the Celesteela, he wouldn't have a whole lot of good switch-ins unless he's got like Unaware Clefable in the back. Or if he's got like a status move on Clefable or something like that. So Latios, I think, has the potential not to sweep, but to break for the rest of my team to be successful in this game. So that was kind of the idea there with the Latios set. Next up here was kind of a must bring. We got Alolan Muck, Figgy Berry Gluttony, Pursuit, Knockoff, Poison Jab, and Recycle. Max HP, a good amount into special defense with an Adamant Nature, just to get the extra attack boost. With 96 attack EVs, I believe I guaranteed KO Alakazam with Pursuit if he switches out on me. Guaranteed KO it with Knockoff if he stays in, more importantly. Knockoff and Poison Jab, really Dark plus Poison was all I needed this game. Like, yeah, he can go Celesteela on me, but knocking off that thing's item is still useful for me in the long run, and it can at least help scout out if he's got a Z-move user on his team. I can actually live from full a Life Orb Earth Power from Timid Nidoking, so if, like, turn 1 or something, or what have you, we just have Muck versus Nidoking, I can stay in and knock that thing off. Even if he does go for Earth Power, I'll live it, get my Figgy Berry, and get back up over half, and then be able to do a huge chunk of damage to him with knockoff and severely decrease his damage output with knockoff to remove his life orb. So that's the idea behind the muck there. Mostly just here to trap the Mega Alakazam. The only variant of Mega Alakazam that can touch Alolan Muck is Miracle Eye, so while I'm not necessarily expecting him to have it, it's definitely some strong possibility if he does bring the Alakazam that it would have Miracle Eye, but I really don't have a lot of better answers to it on my team, so I still have to go hard muck on that thing. Hopefully Pursuit Trap it and make sure it's not a threat to the rest of my team. Tapu Bulu is a decent secondary answer to Alakazam, but Muck is really the primary answer here to try and Pursuit Trap that thing and get it out of the game. Next up here, we've got Raikou. Raikou's running Expert Belt this week with Volt Switch, HP Ice, Thunderbolt, and Signal Beam. Max special attack, enough speed investment for the Galvantula. Volt Switch is nice to pressure things like the Toxapex and the Celesteela. Even if he protects up, he could think I'm Choice Scarf, Choice Specs, whatever, and he might make the wrong play. Basically, if he protects with Celesteela, and I Volt Switch, or same thing with the Toxapex, if I Volt Switch into a Protect, I'm absolutely HP Icing the next turn to catch something like Nidoking or Gligar trying to switch in on me. I should 2-hit KO either of those with HP Ice. Potentially OHKO the Gligar, depending on what kind of set he's running, if he's running Fizdef or if he's running Spadef. So the HP Ice is nice for that. Thunderbolt just pressures his team really hard, whacks things like the Celesteela and the Toxapex specifically. It's just really nice to break through that core of his team. And Signal Beam is there exclusively for the Hoopa Unbound. That thing is a giant threat. Signal Beam should, I think, OHKO it from full, assuming he's not Assault Vest or Spadef type invested or bulky or whatever. Like standard Choice Band type Hoopa should drop to Signal Beam, I believe, or at least it does a lot of damage, so I can pick it off with Ice Shard or something like that later in the match. So Raikou here has a good matchup, but also can get kind of stalled out by things like Spadef Clefable could be potentially an issue, or obviously if I start clicking electric moves on his ground types, that could be a bit of an issue. Allowing things to get, like Nidoking to get in for free is going to be kind of a hit or miss, assuming I make the right play and click HP Ice over the course of the match. Last up here, we've got Tapu Bulu. Tapu Bulu has kind of a weird matchup this week because it's very bad against like Nidoking and Celesteela, but it's also good to weaken the Celesteela. So if I'm not able to lure the Celesteela with my Latios, the plan was to kind of weaken it down with Tapu Bulu to put it in range of things like my Mamoswine and my Aerodactyl. So I've got Bulk Up, Horn Leech, Stone Edge, and Leech Seed. I went back and forth on Leech Seed. Originally I had Protect on there so I could guaranteed live 2 Psychics from Mega Alakazam, but in the long run I felt I had let me check the roll on that actually, because that's kind of important. In the long run, I kind of felt like I had the ability to live 2 Psychics from Mega Alakazam. I'm mostly Spadef invested with max HP and a tiny bit into attack. This is Adamant just to get the extra damage boost out of it, but the idea was I should be able to come in on Mega Alakazam as kind of a secondary check and eat 2 Timid Psychics. I don't think he'd run Modest versus me just because I do have the Aerodactyl, and I think he'd want to try and force the speed tie, and my Aerodactyl outspeeds Modest Zam anyways, so I felt like the idea would be more that he'd want to try and live 2. So yeah, I should guaranteed live 2 Psychics, assuming Stealth Rocks aren't up. If Stealth Rocks are up, it's a 41% chance to KO me. So not great, I'll say, and Protect would have kind of avoided that situation. But the idea is basically I could have this be my secondary check to his Alakazam if he's shown Miracle Eye or something like that. Even though I do live a Psychic from full with my Muck, if he Miracle Eyes me, assuming again rocks aren't up, I think it's kind of important to have the secondary check, especially because I don't have anything that naturally outspeeds the Alakazam on my team. So yeah, the idea behind the Bulu is basically to bulk up on a predicted Celesteela switch in, then go for Leech Seed. He shouldn't be able to 2-hit KO me with Heavy Slam from that range, and the Leech Seed recovery is going to help me get further out of range, and basically just help me chip him down. Leech Seed plus Leftovers plus Grassy Terrain is a ton of health back to my Tapu Bulu anyways, so I could actually potentially 1v1 the Celesteela, or use that opportunity to get out into my Raikou, because if I am predicting him to go for Heavy Slam, that's obviously not going to do very much to me. If I have the Leech Seed off on him and Grassy Terrain up, that's going to be a lot of health back to my Raikou anyways, and the Grassy Terrain will weaken a potential Earthquake, so we can't even like predict my Raikou switch in with an Earthquake, because it's going to be weakened by Grassy Terrain, so it wouldn't do too much to me anyways. So that's kind of the idea behind the Tapu Bulu there. Like I mentioned, kind of a weird matchup because it gets kind of bodied by Nidoking and to some extent Celesteela, but it also has some great utility here. It can help me break through Toxapex, can help me break through non-unaware variants of Clefable. And even if he is unaware Clefable, I can still Leech Seed that thing for recovery, so he can't just indefinitely kind of set up on me. I should still be able to 2-hit KO him with Horn Leech plus Leech Seed. So he can't just kind of set up on me with Calm Mind or anything like that. And I should outspeed it, assuming he's running no speed investment on it. So that's kind of the idea behind the Tapu Bulu. Just kind of sit on his team, spread around some Leech Seed, get some chip, and allow something like Raikou or Aerodactyl or even Latios to clean up in the back. Kind of the idea behind that. Also, getting a Leech Seed off on Salamence could be nice, because after Leech Seed plus Stealth Rocks, he is guaranteed in range of Ice Shard for my Mamoswine. Even if I don't have Stealth Rocks up, Leech Seed plus HP Ice from my Raikou should knock him out, because even if he goes +1, he shouldn't knock out Raikou with an Earthquake as long as my Grassy Terrain is up. So that's the team we're running in with this week. Again, kind of an offensive team, but that's just the build. We got bulky offense, so we're bringing bulky offense. So pretty much everything on my team can take a hit from something and deal a ton of damage back, but I don't have kind of good walls on the team. Even like Muck isn't going to hard wall Mega Alakazam, even if he's not carrying Miracle Eye. That's kind of the idea. So just getting into team preview here, he did not bring the Celesteela, which is great for me. He also did not bring the Hoopa Unbound, which is great for me. I don't have to worry about switching into that thing. Bulu and Muck are kind of my best switch-ins to Banded, Hoopa, Unbound, and even they don't appreciate repeatedly switching in on that monster. So I'm very glad to not see that. Very glad to not see the Celesteela, and also kind of glad to not see the Shaman. Shaman could have put in some work versus my team. It's kind of a good offensive check to my Mamoswine, but just looking at team preview, he's stupid weak to Mamoswine. Even though I don't have Icicle Crash, so I can't OHKO the Nidoking, Ice Shard's still going to do like 70-75% to that thing. I don't think Ice Shard KOs Fizdef Gligar, assuming he's running like EVL8 standard kind of set. But I should obviously threaten that thing out. He's got to expect me to have Icicle Crash. Earthquake whacks the Toxapex. Ice Shard whacks the Salamence after it rocks. Ice Shard can help me remove the Mega Alakazam if it's chipped. And Earthquake should 2-hit KO most variants of Clefable. So really good matchup for Mamoswine here, and I'm just going to lead off with it. I'm thinking he might lead with like Gligar or Clefable, just to get a better matchup on a potential Mega Aerodactyl lead or a potential Muck lead. Gligar makes some sense. I also don't want him to lead Nidoking, because Nidoking can just kind of put in the hurt on my team turn 1. Mamoswine should be able to live a hit, assuming he's not carrying Focus Blast. So I'm just going to lead off with Mamoswine as he opts to lead off with the Gligar. So great situation for me. I'm going to Stealth Rock here just because, like I mentioned, Ice Shard's not going to OHKO this thing anyway, and he makes the right play here and goes for Stealth Rocks, predicting me to go for my own. Not really sure who it's worse for that the Stealth Rocks are up. It's probably worse for me in the long run, but getting that chip off on Salamence means that it's guaranteed in range of Ice Shard, and now he has to try and switch in on me, so I'm just going to go for knockoff here. I either remove the EVL8 on Gligar and then KO it with Ice Shard the following turn, or as I predict, he goes to Toxapex here to eat the Ice move, and he's got to pivot out now, predicting an Earthquake. So I remove the Black Sludge on Toxapex. Any chip damage on that thing is nice. Getting rid of the Black Sludge is nice, and I just get to Earthquake for free here. He does go out into Salamence, but turns out to not be Intimidate, which means, like I mentioned, he will die to an Ice Shard this turn, and he's still got no switch in. Like, if I Ice Shard, I 2-hit KO Alakazam, and Clefable really doesn't want to come in on it either, and he would reveal whether or not he's Magic Guard. So free Ice Shard here to knock out the Salamence, and now I've shown my whole set, so he knows I'm not carrying the Icicle Crash, but he gets to go out pretty freely into Mega Alakazam here. Fearing a potential Focus Blast or a Psychic, I have to switch out into my Muck here as he makes the right play and goes for the Miracle Eye. So he does have Miracle Eye on the Alakazam, but that means it's probably not a Calm Mind variant, because I think you need Psychic, you need Shadow Ball, and I think you'd opt for something like Focus Blast or HP Ground to hit my Heat Ram. So he does show the Miracle Eye, which means I will drop to a modest Psychic from Mega Alakazam, more than likely. I probably could have lived a Timid, but I can't risk him being modest here. I gotta go out into my Tapu Bulu, and he max rolls me with Timid Psychic. So, like I mentioned, it was still only a 41% chance to 2-hit KO me, so it was slightly in my favor, but I'm really regretting taking off the Protect now, because I could have protected here and gone for Horn Leech on the following turn and gotten my health back, and my Tapu Bulu would still be alive, but now it drops to the 2 Psychics here, and I have to go back out into Muck. Now we've got kind of a 50-50. I could knock off here, but I feel like Toxapex is a pretty obvious switch in. Obviously, he can't Psychic me right now because he doesn't have the Miracle Eye up anymore, so I'm just going to go for Pursuit, as he does stay in and go for Hidden Power Ground. I think after the game, we were talking, and he mentioned, like, oh, man, I made the wrong play, because if you're going to stay in there, I think the stay-in play is to click Miracle Eye, because then you could potentially knock me out with a Psychic on the following turn. Since he is Timid Alakazam, it looks like, he actually wouldn't have knocked me out with a Psychic, but he would have done a ton of damage to me. So I think the right play there was probably Miracle Eye. Unfortunately for him, he went for the HP ground, so I'm going to be able to Pursuit Trap this Alakazam and remove it from being a threat to the rest of my team. My Mamoswine is looking fantastic in the back. Aerodactyl's looking pretty good as well, and Raikou as well, even though he's still got the 2 ground types alive. It's looking pretty good. So here he's going to go out into his Nidoking. Obviously, he's going to knock me out with an Earth Power if he goes for that. I debate staying in just because I'm fearing an Ice Beam, but like I mentioned during the team builder, I should live an Ice Beam with my Latios after Stealth Rocks. And I think my Muck is a little too useful for a potential Calm Mind Clefable in the back. So I'm just going to go out into my Latios, as he does make the right play and Ice Beams me there. But like I mentioned, I was guaranteed to live that hit. And here, I think he has to switch out, but I can't really risk him staying in and getting no chip damage off. So I'm just going to go for Ice Beam here. He goes into Gligar. I think the better play was probably to go Clefable there, but he doesn't know my set, so I could be like Calm Mind, Psychium Z or something like that. And he ends up sacking out the Gligar to an Ice Beam. So here he's got the option to go into Clefable or Toxapex, basically. He could go into Nidoking. I think he might live an Ice Beam, but if choice specs, he wouldn't. So he kind of has to go out into Toxapex or Clefable here. He opts for Toxapex, which means I can just recover up on this thing. Even if he's got like Haze or Knockoff, or he does have Knockoff or Toxic or anything, Recover's still my best play here. As you can see, Knockoff's doing very little to me because I do have the Z move. So I'm just going to recover up again in his face, as he does have Toxic. So if he didn't have Toxic there, he's actually in a really bad situation because I could start Calm Minding in his face. But because he's got Toxic, I can't indefinitely live here with my Latios. So I'm just going to go for Calm Mind this turn. I don't knock out Toxapex from this range with a Z Gigavolt Havoc until I'm +1. So I'm going +1 on him, as I'm expecting to just go for another knockoff, and he does. And since he hasn't switched out to this point, I don't think he's going to. Like I mentioned, if I'm Psychium Z, he doesn't have a switch in, so he can't really risk that. I'm just going to go for my Gigavolt Havoc here to get rid of this Toxapex. So this thing is gone. Again, things like my Mamoswine, my Aerodactyl looking really nice in the back here. But the Gigavolt Havoc is going to take care of this thing, and now it's just down to Clefable and Nidoking. His only option here is still to go into his Clefable, because Nidoking's going to drop to an Ice Beam, and I'm still alive. I do die to Toxic next turn, so he can potentially just Soft Boil to my face if he wants to, or he can just go for Moonblast to knock me out. He doesn't necessarily want to risk me going for Recover and coming back in later in the game, so I'm just going to go for Ice Beam here. Get a good chunk of damage off, potentially freeze, don't freeze. He has Magic Guard, by the way, he didn't take Stealth Rock damage, and he goes for Moonblast here, which is really good for me because that means I can either go into my Muck or into my Mamoswine here. The reason I decide to go into Mamoswine is that I don't want to bait in the Nidoking to get another KO on me by going for Poison Jab this turn. So I'm just going to go out into my Mamoswine. He shouldn't be able to knock me out from here with a Moonblast, and I can just click Earthquake. Earthquake should 2-hit KO this Clefable, as it does look like he's physically defensive. And like I mentioned, Moonblast should not knock me out. So he goes for Moonblast, gets me down to a pretty low amount of health, but I am out of range of Life Orb Chip, which means I can Earthquake once more, either kill the Nidoking or kill the Clefable. If he goes into Nidoking, I win because I can kill the Clefable the following turn, so he has to sack Clefable here. And I still have 1 Life Orb hit left in me, which means I can Ice Shard the Nidoking to guaranteed put it in range of HP Ice from my Raikou. So we're going to pick up the win here. It's going to be a 3-0 because I do have to sack my Mamoswine to kill this Nidoking. Obviously, if I manage to somehow get a crit here with Ice Shard, that would be great. I'd knock out the Nidoking, keep the 4-0. But I'm perfectly content to sack off the Mamoswine here, get a bunch of damage off from the Nidoking. He can't even sub up on me because I bring him below 25%. So if he was a sub variant of Nidoking, it wouldn't matter. And like I mentioned, I can just go right out into my Raikou here. Even if he's Choice Scarf, he's just locked himself into Ice Beam, and I can just HP Ice him to knock him out and pick up the 3-0 victory. So good game to the Quinnipiac Qwilfish. He made a lot of the right predictions with like Miracle Eye, with Ice Beam, things like that. But a couple times the switches just weren't there, like Gligar coming in on the Latios. I felt probably should have been Clefable. And then going Toxapex after I knocked out the Gligar instead of going Clefable cost him another Pokemon. So he had a little bit of trouble playing around the Latios there, but in general I thought he played pretty well. Great prep with the Miracle Eye on Mega Alakazam. Nidoking was played very well as well, in my opinion. Going for Ice Beam on that Latios was a really big turn for him, because if he had gone for Earth Power there, he would have just lost so much momentum, because I could have Calm Minded in his face as he went out into Gligar, Ice Beam that thing on the following turn, and then been in a fantastic position, could have Z'd the Toxapex. I probably honestly would have just won from with Latios from there, because it did turn out he was Magic Guard Clefable. So I thought he played pretty well, all things considered. He just didn't have a whole lot on the team to deal with Mamoswine. Mamoswine picked up 2 kills and almost a third on Nidoking there. So huge amount of work put in by Mamoswine this game. Latios actually also did very well. Picked up 2 kills itself. And then Raikou was able to clean up in the back here. So very good game, like I mentioned. We're now 3-0 on the season, which is really nice for us. We're looking to kind of solidify a spot in playoffs going forward. Obviously, it's still a little early in the season for that, but I had a couple close games here in the early going. I think we're 3-0 plus 7, so our differential is nothing crazy. But like I mentioned in my first video, as long as I'm winning, I don't really care what the differential is. This is kind of a more offensive team. You can see this game only went 20 turns. I believe my last game went like 18 turns. So I really don't expect to have a lot of long games this season. Like, I don't have a lot of quote-unquote stall potential. I expect more of my games to go kind of like this, where it's kind of back and forth, sacking stuff, and just doing more damage than I take is kind of the idea behind the team. So thank you guys very much for watching if you did to this point. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope to see you around in the next video. Have a good one, guys. Bye-bye.